Sound speeds, and welcome to the second half of our new podcast test. This is episode 6. Let's waste no time and get right into our content. There's no question AI is definitely coming to the world of sound, and we know that Adobe Podcast AI has been out for well over a year at this time. And there's a lot of different type of AI technology, including those that can take a regular voice and make it sound like someone else in real time. I did a video about that as well. So the Adobe Podcast AI video is one that if you watch it, you'll hear me go farther and farther away from the camera microphone that was just on top of the Sony ZV-1. And by the time I got 40 or 50 feet away, it was still able to pull out my voice and make it sound like it was close through equalization and resampling of my sound. And then I did another video where I talked about and made myself sound like Obama, actually. So you can check out that video right there. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because AI is something that is dangerous. We need to be very careful about that. I personally think, and I've been saying for over a year now, that as soon as politicians, especially in election years, start having video AI and sound AI used to make them look and sound like they did something they never did, and it starts to affect them personally when it comes down to getting reelected, that's when they'll start to regulate it and take it more seriously. But until then, they're not going to as much because it doesn't affect them. So, But AI is extremely dangerous because you can very easily program it to make someone sound like they said something that they didn't say. Or you can take someone and in real time have them respond to someone. That way you could pretend that, you know, your voice is someone else, that you're able to maybe call up a prank call somebody as their dad or as their boyfriend or girlfriend, something like that. You need to be very careful. And as we move forward, a little side note here, you might want to tell people that are in your close family, like your children and your spouse, I don't want to say a safe word, but let's say a password. That if someone were to say, "Hey, I need you to meet me, you know, your brother or sister, your mom or somebody just got hit by a car. I need you to meet me at the hospital." Okay, what's the password? I don't know. Well, then I'm not going to trust you. And if they recall the password, then you know that there is that the person's probably the person they claim they are, because you don't share the secret password for the family. You just don't do it. That's one of the things you're going to need to do as you go farther forward. The reason I'm mentioning this is because there is AI technology that is used to create a totally different type voice. And then there's AI technology that is used for making your voice enhanced in some way. Adobe Podcast AI is one of those that takes your voice, it kind of resamples it through AI, and then it makes you sound better, in quotes. Now, one thing you can do if you haven't completely bought in on the AI thing, or maybe the Adobe Podcast AI sounds pretty good, but it doesn't really sound great. One of the tricks you can do is the same thing we would use in a DAW when you apply an effect: wet and dry. So what does that mean? The signal that I have coming into this microphone right now, completely unprocessed, is what's considered to be dry. If you start to add effects to it and you start to make it sound different through equalization, through process, virtual studio technology, VSTs, whatever, you start to make it sound different. And it is only entirely processed. You're not using anything of the original anymore. The exact sound, when it's fully processed, is considered wet. Now, when you go into something like Reaper, or, well, any DAW basically, even Audacity, if you were to combine a processed version, the wet signal, with the dry signal at maybe 70, 75%, 60%, 50%, something like that, and basically you have a fully processed signal and you start to add back a little bit of the original, even though it's not perfect according to your processing standards, you add a little bit to it, you're bringing back some of that original naturalness to it. So you're going to be lowering the processing sound, but the trade-off is it's going to sound more natural. Well, you can do the exact same thing with something like Adobe Podcast AI. If you process your sound through that, you can then start to use that as the wet signal and start to add back in your original audio just a little bit to process it and help it to sound a little more natural. So that's something you can do if you are using something like Adobe Podcast AI or any other AI technology that processes it, is knowing the difference between wet and dry and how much of the dry you need to add back up, and listen to this to hear at what balance it's going to sound best on your voice or whoever's voice you happen to be recording. When it comes to microphone placement, a lot of people hear their own breathing and it drives them nuts. What causes that? Well, plain and simple, it's getting close to a microphone. If you are talking very soft for your audio recording, you're going to have to bring your microphone closer in order to make yourself sound decent. So if I'm speaking very quiet, and this is going to start creeping people out, hearing a very soft Alan voice, you're going to hear more mouth pops and crinkles. You're going to hear more breathing. So every time I take a breath, you're going to notice it. It's going to start to really sound too intimate. It's going to be sounding like I'm whispering into your ear. And unless you're a really twisted person, you're not into this. You're also hearing the increased bass in my voice from the proximity effect of getting close to the microphone. But all those breaths, all of my breathing, all the mouth pops, all the crinkles, all these little sibilant sounds, those are going to start to drive you crazy. Now, if you back off on your microphone a little bit, like what I normally do, I would raise up my voice. Get out of the frame. Get out of the frame. Get out of the frame. It's going to be right at the edge, isn't it? Yep. Another millimeter. There we go. If you back off a little bit, you have to speak up because you want to get a decent signal out of the microphone. But by me backing off on the microphone and raising up my voice, it does two things. It, number one, reduces some of the bass from the proximity effect because I'm backing away on the microphone. Therefore, the bass is going to go away a little bit. And number two, I'm getting rid of my breaths. Now, sure, there are other things too, but those are the big two things. The closer you bring it, the more proximity effect and the more detail you're going to get out of the voice. The farther away it is, the less bass you're going to get and the less detail, basically. I have a video called the microphone spec that we want but will never get, or something similar. And that's talking about detail. But if you want to get your voice to sound more free of breaths, one of the things you can do is back off on the microphone. You're not noticing my breaths nearly as much now as you were when I was bringing the microphone close, right? It's because my voice is talking at this volume here and my breaths are at this volume. Versus when I was talking closer to the microphone, my voice volume was here and my breath volume was here. You notice it a lot more. So if you want to eliminate your breaths, first of all, you shouldn't need to eliminate them because breathing is natural and it's not necessarily a flaw in the audio recording. But if you want to reduce them, raise up your voice a little bit, back off on your microphone, and the breaths will go away. So this was a surprisingly short episode of this podcast. But hey, we tackled two topics and we did it in beast mode, I guess. We did it the way we needed to, didn't embellish, didn't overword things. I mean, geez, we're not even at 10 minutes into this podcast just yet, but we've conquered our topics. So hopefully it's made sense to you. If you want to ask me a question, please write it in an email to alan@soundspeeds.us. Email address also that works is soundspeeds@yahoo.com. But aside from that, I appreciate you watching and listening and tuning in and whatever else. Be sure to tune into the next episode because we will be on episode 7 at that point in the last 4/5 of this test, because we've finished as of this episode 3/5 of our test. 3 episodes, actually it'd be 6 episodes of 10 would be down. So anyway, I'm going to waste no more time. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode with more sound advice. Have a question you'd like answered or want to add something? Be sure to write it in the comment section down below. You can also make a suggestion for future topics of discussion. Again, comment section down below, or you can email me at soundspeeds@yahoo.com. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on future sound advice.